All right, so the federal government announcing their plans and their targets for the sale of zero-emission vehicles. Their plan to eliminate the internal combustion engine vehicle by 2035. Automakers have the next 12 years, count them, 12 years, to phase out those combustion engine cars, trucks, and SUVs. There will be an electric vehicle sales mandate, which starts in 2026. It heads up to 100% in 2035. With more on this, Daniel Breton is on the program. He's president and CEO of Electric Mobility Canada. Daniel, welcome back to the show.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. And by the way, if our listeners want to give us a call, 514-790-0800. Daniel has agreed to answer a few of your questions over the next little while. So if you have a question about electric vehicles, we will get to yours coming up. Daniel, first things first. I know the current sales figures in Quebec. Maybe you have an even more recent number, but the last figure I saw in Quebec right now, we're at 23% plus of new car sales are electric. British Columbia, 26% right now. And then I hear the federal government and Stephen Guilbeault is crowing, in 2026, 20% of cars must be electric. And I say, well, I don't know if that's much of a target or it's just trying to take credit for the inevitable. What say you, Daniel?
That's a very good question. Actually, if you look at ZEV sales, meaning it includes electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, it was at 13.3% as of Q3 2023.
All of Canada you're talking about, all of Canada.
All of Canada, because obviously Quebec and BC are way ahead of the pack. But let's face it, it won't be much of a challenge to reach 20% by 2026 because ZEV sales grow by approximately 40% a year.
Yeah.
If we were to grow at about 23%, we would already surpass our 2026 target.
So, I guess that answers my question there. This is like Stephen Guilbeault taking credit for what's already happening. So how do you view the announcement yesterday? Are there any points that you pick out as particularly good or worrisome, or how would you describe it?
Well, let's face it. The Canadian government has been following almost blindly the U.S. regulation over the past 3 decades. So what that means is that if you look at, there was a report published about a month ago regarding GHG emissions per kilometer driven by light-duty vehicle fleets. Canada was dead last in the world right after the U.S. Mm-hmm. So we have so much work to do to make sure that our light-duty vehicle fleet gets cleaner. So because of that, the government had to do something. It adopted its EV availability standard, which is a good start. But I think we have to be more ambitious than that, even though some car manufacturers keep saying that it's too stringent.
So when you say we need to be more ambitious, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, we were asking for 100% by 2030.
Uh-huh.
So 100% by 2035 is not bad, but I mean, it is not leadership. Because if you look at BC, they're asking for 90% by 2030. Mm-hmm. Quebec, 85% by 2030, while Canada is asking for 60% by 2030. I understand that some jurisdictions are less, how shall I put this, progressive when it comes to EV, like prairie provinces, for instance. But Manitoba has a new government, so we are expecting things to turn around in Manitoba. But Alberta, Saskatchewan are still a challenge.
So, okay, so having said that, right, look at 20, let's just run the numbers. You said right now in this country, the sales are increasing by 40% year over year, okay?
Yeah.
If you run the numbers, it's going to be 100% by 2030. We don't even need a mandate.
Well, to be totally honest, we do need a mandate because as regulation gets more stringent around the world, car manufacturers who have issues catching up with EV production are already sending their EVs to regulated jurisdictions or countries first and foremost. So that's why we're seeing 30, 40, 50, 60, and even 90% EV sales in other countries in the world because that's where car manufacturers send the vehicles in priority.
Gotcha.
So if Canada doesn't have regulation, and keep in mind that, I think I mentioned this before, back in 2011, when the Canadian and the Ontario government gave $140 million to Toyota to assemble the RAV4 EV in Ontario, because there was no regulation, even though back then there was an $8,500 rebate in Ontario, because there was no regulation to make sure that those EVs were sold in Canada, 100% of them were sent to the U.S. So you could be trying to buy a RAV4 EV back then. Toyota did not offer that vehicle in Canada. So to us, considering that now the Canadian, the Ontario, the Quebec government are investing billions of dollars in EV assembly, battery assembly, it would be a shame for Canada not to be able, especially for Canadians who are paying with their taxpayers' money to make sure that these vehicles are assembled in Canada, for them not to be able to get their hands on them across Canada.
All right, let me take a caller here, Daniel. We're going to go to Alan in Côte St. Luc. Hi, Alan. What is your question?
Good morning, gentlemen. My question is, why hasn't one of the companies come out with solar cells on top of the electric cars instead of sunroofs, which I don't use, I don't believe in, and it would help keep the charge in the batteries when the car is outside in the daytime or whenever light is available for the solar cells.
Okay, Alan, great question. I'm going to let Daniel answer that one. Daniel, what's the story there? Why don't we see electric vehicles with solar panels on the roof?
We already have seen them since 10 or 12 years now. We saw that with Toyota. We're seeing that with Lucid. We have seen that with what's the name? There's another manufacturer who made a car with solar cells on the roof. But the truth is that the difference, although it does make a difference, is not that significant. It won't make for a car to be able not to have to charge for 1,000 kilometers. It will make maybe a 10% difference on range, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, so the efficiency is still not there in that limited space that would happen in a car.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
We're going to have more with Daniel Breton coming up. On the flip side of traffic, if you've got a question about EVs, we'll take them through to 11 o'clock. All right, we're continuing in transit today, supersizing it, and continuing with Daniel Breton, who's president and CEO of Electric Mobility Canada. If you've got a question about electric cars, he's probably got an answer. Let me go to our phone lines here. Oh, and I've got an Elias on the lines. Hi, Elias. It's Elias here. What's your question?
My question is, it's a two-part question. Number one, are governments ready to sustain the demand that the electric vehicles will have? Do we have the infrastructure? And secondly, are we likely to see an increase in our hydro bill where we thought that we'd be saving from the high gas prices? Will we have high hydro prices to pay for once this law is fully in effect?
Those are terrific questions, Elias. Let's get Daniel's take. Daniel?
Very simply, you have to differentiate the growth in EV sales and the growth in EV fleet. So what that means is that when we get to 100% EV sales by 2035, until we get to 100% EV fleet, it's going to be 2050, which means that we have basically more than a quarter of a century to adapt the grid to the number of EVs that are going to be on the road. So we at EMC published a statement about a month and a half ago on the grid readiness of electricity production utilities across Canada related to the number of EVs. And what we have found out is that actually it's going to be more of a challenge to adapt to population growth, GDP growth, than EV growth, because EVs are going to be part of the solution with smart charging and smart charging and EV charging that can go back and forth. So it's not going to be an issue. And as I said, the electricity demand will keep growing, but it's much less going to be a problem with EVs than anything else.
Yeah, and
when it comes to infrastructure, the government of Quebec has released its EV infrastructure strategy in September, where they say that they want to reach 116,000 public chargers by 2030 so that we can accommodate number of EVs on the road in Quebec. In Canada, there's a program called the Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program that's been put together that is investing more than $1 billion so far, more per capita than in the U.S., so that we have more public chargers across the country. So, I mean, it is a challenge, but keep in mind that the money that will be kept in our pocket as people in Quebec is going to be much more than what gets out of Quebec. Mm-hmm. It costs in Quebec $1 billion a month to import gas and diesel. So that $1 billion at one end will mean that we'll have much more money in our pocket, even though we lose tax money, than what's happening right now.
I love that you point that out, Daniel, because this is what's often forgotten by a lot of people. They always forget the alternatives. they love to attack, let's say, electric vehicles. They forget what the current system is. Not that great either. Let me ask you this question that comes from our text line from a listener, and this is one I hear a lot. What about battery life? I hear it only lasts, electric car battery only lasts 5 or 6 years, and then it costs $6,000 to change. That's very expensive. And why would I buy an used electric car when I have to invest $6,000 in a battery? What do we know now about battery life, Daniel?
Okay. So life of the battery normally will last longer than the vehicle itself. That's the first thing. Second thing is that now there are more and more garages and specialists that instead of having to change the battery, you fix the battery, meaning that you can change a component or a module instead of changing the whole battery. This is something that is more and more frequent. But always keep in mind that battery life lasts a lot longer than people initially thought 10, 12, 15 years ago. So the issue is not so much is the battery going to last. It will last. There are some exceptions. There can be some defects. But keep in mind that batteries are generally under warranty of 8 to 10 years, between 160 and 240,000 kilometers. So batteries are not the issue here. The issue is to make sure that now we have to train more and more mechanics so that they can fix those batteries, because now there are some specialists out there, but not enough of them yet.
More questions on the batteries. Here's another question. I get this question a lot, and the listener writes this, Daniel. Why is no one talking about how much energy, fossil fuels, and mining it requires to build the batteries? And they're questioning the environmental impact of batteries versus traditional old gasoline. What do you say to that, Daniel?
Yeah. That's a great question. And actually, you have to look at the whole life cycle of the vehicle, meaning that it goes from mining the critical minerals, mining the resources for gas and electric vehicles, to assembling the vehicles, gas or electric, to using the vehicle, and then getting rid or recycling the vehicle. So if you look at the whole life cycle, all of the time, everywhere in the world, electric vehicles are always cleaner as a whole than comparable gas vehicles. Either you're in Canada, you're in China, you're in India, whatever the production of electricity is, it's always cleaner. But not only that, as time goes by, electric vehicles are getting cleaner because we're getting into more sophisticated production system for batteries. But gas vehicles are getting dirtier because we're turning more towards unconventional sources of oil production. Keep in mind that the majority of the oil production nowadays in Canada and the U.S. is no more from conventional oil, but it's unconventional oil, meaning tar sands or shale oil. So this is a real issue that no one talks about.
Daniel, another question about batteries. I have someone asking about thoughts on battery swapping technology. So instead of charging the vehicle, you just go to a spot and they swap out the depleted battery and give you a fully charged battery. A listener mentioning NIO and Volvo's battery swap option. What are your take on that? Swapping a battery in 5 minutes instead of charging up over 20 or 25 minutes?
Well, it was a thing until I would say 3-4 years ago, because there were companies that were offering battery swapping, and NIO actually is still doing that. I saw that in Norway last year. But the truth of the matter is that now we have electric vehicles that have, instead of 150 kilometers, they have 400 to 600 kilometers of range, and charging went from 1 hour to, in the best cases, 15 to 20 minutes, and some of them are getting even faster. So battery swapping is less and less of a solution because there's less and less of a problem.
Last question here, Daniel, from a listener, and it has to do to the cost of electric cars, and that they say the electric cars are too expensive. What's your forecast for the cost of electric cars over the next few years?
Great question yet again. So if you look at the average selling price of a new light-duty vehicle in September 2023 across Canada, believe it or not, it was at $67,800, which is a lot more than I expected. But people buy more and more light-duty trucks, SUVs in particular, and pickup trucks, meaning that the price of cars have gone way up. I'm talking gas cars here. And car manufacturers, keep in mind that the vast majority of them do not offer entry-level subcompact cars anymore in Canada. So this means that the price of gas cars has gone way up. So when you look at that, you see that now we have almost 50 different EV models or PHEV models that you can buy below the average selling price of a new light-duty vehicle. And as there was a report published by Morgan Stanley about a month ago that estimated that because battery prices has started to come down again, we are expecting EV prices to be at par, purchase price, by 2026 approximately. So now with the rebate, when you're in Canada with the federal rebate, I said almost 50 vehicles are available below the average selling price of a new car. But when you add the Quebec rebate, it means that they're very competitive. And that's not even counting the fact that energy is a lot less costly when it comes to electricity than gas.
Daniel, it's always great talking electric cars and catching up with you. Come back real soon and we'll repeat this because I think there's a lot of interest.
Okay, thanks a lot.
That's Daniel Breton, President and CEO of Electric Mobility Canada.